All right, we're going to be moving right along with our next grouping of presentations. We're going from our last session, which was Mental Health Education Society, into our session on Addiction Health and Society. I'm just going to pass the floor over to our presenters for today. I will be acting as an easel for them so that we can make this work. What I can.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Anna Marker. This is my colleague, Mackenzie. And we have been studying the short-term health impacts of tattooing and how that affects people's future motivations to get tattoos. Our main focus is tattoo flu. So for anybody who hasn't heard of tattoo flu, sometimes like the same day or next day after getting a tattoo, people will develop flu-like symptoms, and then it lasts a couple days. It's nothing super serious. And we have been looking at what might cause that. And again, how that affects people's future motivations to get tattoos. This is ongoing, so we're still collecting data, but we've been doing a mix of interviews and surveys. And right now, the biggest thing we have found is that the color versus like fine line work on tattoos is the biggest contributor to getting tattoo flu. And we believe that's because of the process. So with color tattoos and like really saturated, like dark work, you have to go over same area of skin. You're doing it like multiple times. You really gotta like really get that ink in there. And that's a lot more trauma to the body than say like a fine line work where you're using like a single needle, tattoo needle, and you're like just once or twice going over the line. So that's it's a lot more for the body to heal. And that's the biggest reason why we think people are developing tattoo flu. As for the motivations, so far what we found is it does not impact people's want to get a tattoo in the future. Everybody we've talked to, whether it's their like 50th tattoo or their first tattoo, have said that they want to get more tattoos in the future.
Just kind of explain our change through this bottom section right here. A group of us actually went to the Omaha Tattoo Convention. So just to describe the poster more, the bottom middle section is we went to an Omaha Tattoo Convention with the tattoo shop that we work with in Sioux Falls. And so it kind of just depicts our time there. And then the graphs are just depicting like the motivations, the symptoms. Our biggest symptom is just fatigue in general. I think that's about it.
I think I've been fired from being an easel. All right, I'm gonna think that we have, if I'm not mistaken, we've got a couple of recorded presentations. And so I'm gonna transition into one of those and then we'll continue forward. I'm just gonna briefly ask my colleagues over in nursing, do y'all have a preference? Which one would go first? Okay, perfect. All right, then we will start with, yes, yeah, no, I see that they're on.
Hello, I'm Professor Danielle Fleming of the University of South Dakota School of Health Sciences, Department of Nursing. Recent changes to our curriculum and the new BSN Essentials by the AACN have necessitated the exploration of peer feedback. One of the first steps in this process is clearly defining what peer feedback is. Before I delve into the analysis and results, I will provide further background. Peer feedback has been demonstrated to improve student satisfaction and academic performance when conducted effectively while preparing nursing students for clinical practice. Nursing programs have historically utilized traditional faculty-student feedback model for both summative and formative evaluation. And while faculty feedback is essential and necessary, it does not fully equip students to give and receive feedback effectively. Giving and receiving peer feedback allows students to develop conflict resolution, self-reflection, and critical thinking abilities. More post-secondary programs are adopting competency-based education, which allows students to learn and develop their skills at their own pace using active learning methods such as peer feedback. Proponents of competency-based education note the improvement in student critical thinking and engagement with the material in the student-focused learning environment. As nursing programs shift towards competency-based education, developing peer feedback skills becomes increasingly important within the nursing curriculum. This concept analysis was conducted in 2023 using the Walker and Advent 8-step framework. A literature search was conducted using a multi-database search engine for peer feedback and nursing students. Databases included were the Directory of Open Access Journals, CIH-AHL, Medline, Ovid, APA PsycInfo, Science Direct, Teacher Reference Center, Computers and Applied Sciences Complete, ERIC, and Education Source. There was no time limit placed on the search, but the search was limited to full-text peer-reviewed articles. 133 articles were initially identified, and articles that were excluded that were not available in English, were duplicates, or could not be accessed. This resulted in 35 articles. Of those articles that did not include nursing students or specifically identify peer feedback by either definition or characteristics were removed, leaving 22 articles. Figure 1 provides the flow diagram for data collection. At this point, we identified all uses of the concept. Initially, Merriam-Webster's dictionary defines feedback as the transmission of evaluative or corrective information about an action, event, or process to the original or controlling source, and a peer as one that is of equal standing with another, belonging to the same societal group, especially based on age, grade, or status. The concept of peer feedback is used extensively in academia, including business, psychology, and other disciplines where individuals interact to share information to improve performance and develop self-reflection skills. A study aimed at improving peer feedback in higher education defined peer feedback as peers assessing each other's competencies and using that information to phrase appropriate feedback to promote learning in an interaction that benefits both the receiver and provider. When considering all the identified themes and presented definitions in the articles reviewed, the working definition of nursing student peer feedback was developed to be the interactive learning process nursing students engage in for learning, improved performance based on an identified standard, and development of reflection and interpersonal skills. Each of these articles was reviewed to determine the attributes and consequences specific to peer feedback in nursing students. Studies included mixed methods, qualitative, quantitative, and systematic reviews. Every study noted the benefits of peer feedback to learning and performance improvement, although several noted potential negative influence of peer feedback, specifically anxiety related to giving and receiving peer feedback. The defining attributes of peer feedback in nursing students has given a significant insight into this concept. The defining attributes were determined after reviewing the articles describing peer feedback in nursing students. The prevailing attributes identified include interaction, learning, performance, improvement and development, and reflection or insight. 6 of the 22 articles reviewed determined interaction as a defining attribute. Interaction is the aspect of peer feedback where students engage in dialogue through some modality. This modality can be face-to-face, written, or digital. And interaction can also include teamwork as students work together to give and receive peer feedback. 16 of the 22 articles reviewed identified learning as a defining attribute of peer feedback. This contributes to learning for both the provider and recipient as it helps students to close the gap between knowledge and clinical practice. Learning also includes closing the gap between current and expected knowledge. 9 of the articles identified performance, which refers to the individual and team performance of skills and the gaining and applying of knowledge. 10 articles identified improvement and development as defining attributes. Improvement and development include tangible skills, knowledge, critical thinking, and self-reflection abilities in both the provider and receiver of peer feedback. Improvement and development are a continuous cyclical process to ensure quality patient care and clinical competency in the student nurse, which may then be transferred to clinical practice as a professional nurse. 9 of the articles identified reflection and insight. Providing peer feedback to a peer requires an understanding of the criteria and allows students to reflect upon their own knowledge and performance, thereby developing self-reflection and insight. As the receiver of peer feedback, insight and self-reflection are promoted by internalizing received feedback. Before peer feedback, the concept we're studying, can occur, students must have belief. Using the theory of planned behavior, belief is how individuals process the world around them and the precursor for attitudes and behavior. This includes the student's individual, social, and behavioral beliefs regarding peer feedback as either positive or negative. In addition to the student's beliefs, there must also be an external environment or opportunity to participate in peer feedback, and a minimum of 2 peers are necessary for peer feedback to occur, as well as a modality for providing peer feedback, such as written or verbal. The defining consequences include the negative consequence of anxiety at giving and receiving peer feedback, especially when giving negative feedback. Positive consequences include learning, development and improvement, self-reflection or insight. Interaction with peers and performance can be either a negative or positive consequence of peer feedback, depending largely on the peer's internal beliefs and external environment, as well as the feedback modality. Empirical reference were also identified, which is how the concept can be measured concerning the defining attributes to prove that it occurred. Peer feedback has the following empirical reference. Students engage in self-reflection. Students demonstrate insight into their performance and behaviors. Students demonstrate continued development of skills and knowledge. Students demonstrate improved skill, performance, and knowledge application after receiving peer feedback, and students interact with peers. The findings of this concept analysis contributes to the nursing profession and nursing education by understanding the defining characteristics of peer feedback, which allows for developing interventions within the nursing curriculum to improve student learning, interaction, insight, performance, and development of knowledge and skills. This understanding will allow interventions such as training in providing feedback to lessen feedback's negative consequences such as anxiety. Including peer feedback in the nursing curriculum prepares nursing students to meet the standards for nursing practice set forth by the American Association of Nurses for participation in peer review. Some limitations of this concept review include that only peer-reviewed articles in an online databases written in English were included. Some of the articles also included other healthcare workers such as physical therapy and medical students, since studies strictly pertaining to nursing students were scarce. Peer feedback is only sometimes operationally defined or is included as part of peer review or peer assessment. While peer feedback has a significant body of knowledge, we need more research regarding peer feedback specific to nursing students. Peer feedback has unique implications for nursing students as part of the peer review professional practice requirements of the ANA. A clear understanding of peer feedback will allow for further research into students' beliefs about peer feedback, interventions that will improve the process and the impact on learning, and ultimately the impact on patient safety and quality of care in academic and practice settings. A better understanding of the attributes, antecedents, and consequences of peer feedback in nursing students is provided by this concept analysis. Peer feedback can be measured by direct observation as well as self-reported measures on learning, peer interaction, performance, and insight. A clearer understanding of peer feedback allows for the gaps to be addressed through appropriate analysis and intervention to improve the nursing curriculum. At this point, I would like to thank Dr. Susan Fowler of Walden University for her support and feedback during the beginning of this project. I would also like to thank the faculty, staff, and leadership at the University of South Dakota for their continued support, as well as the students in the nursing program at the University of South Dakota, without whom none of this would have been possible. Thank you.
Very interesting. We don't often in the social sciences get to hear a ton about, kind of our other colleges and the work that's going on in other colleges. So it was really, really fascinating. We're going to move forward to our next presenters who are zooming in from representing USD Sioux Falls. I'm not sure, Brandy, Caitlin, who has the presentation on hand.
I do, Dr. Cohen.
Okay.
You just let me know when you want me to share my screen.
Oh, anytime. You should have the ability. If I
Let me see, sorry.
it's all good. It's all good. I'm always worried that there's something that I've forgotten to untick with this. All right,
No,
perfect.
I think we're okay.
All right,
See if I can start a slideshow here.
perfect.
All right. Are we good to go?
Anytime.
Okay. So we did our research on the prevalence of substance use and alcohol abuse within the restaurant industry. Before we start, there's two of us presenting today, but Grace Stolka and Rita McDonald were also part of our research team. So we want to make sure that we give credit where credit's due there. Just to jump right into it, today about 14.5 million people are working in the restaurant industry in the United States. And these workers have been linked to some of the highest rates of substance abuse when compared to other professions. The normality of drug and alcohol use among coworkers adds to the ease, is what we have found. A lot of the coworkers just accept it, and it's very accepted in the workforce there. SMA HSA puts the rest of the world's rest of the restaurant workers first in the illicit drug use and third among heavy alcohol use. That was in 2015. So this background research led us to, and also honestly, all four of us have had ties to the restaurant industry, whether working with them or having very close people within our lives work in the restaurant industry. So we all found this research question pretty interesting. But our research question ended up being whether working in the restaurant industry can lead to increased levels of substance use, both legal and illegal. Working in a restaurant industry is obviously very stressful. There's a reason why there's a saying that people that have worked in there often say that they believe that everyone should work at least one day in the service industry because it's extremely stressful. A lot of the reasons why people say that it's so stressful is because you have kind of an inability to show your true emotion at that time when you're working. You have a pressure to satisfy both the customer as well as your manager. All of this can lead to much higher use, which is what a lot of people use substance and alcohol for, is to combat that stress.
A little bit of our lit review, what current research says. Young individuals are noted to be at higher risk for substance use and substance abuse, making this a very particularly important matter considering that many young individuals are working or have worked in restaurants. A 2018 survey found that 35% of those ages 18 to 25 qualified for binge drinking in the past month, and 24% of those ages 18 to 25 reported use of illicit substances in the past month, and that was by SAMHAS. Let's see. Just a little bit continued. A survey found a survey of 1,294 individuals working in restaurants found that 1/3 of respondents ages 18 to 25 and 50% of those ages 20 to 24 reported problem drinking. We used a mixed methods approach. We used both quantitative and qualitative methods. For our quantitative methods, we handed out surveys. We surveyed, I think we said 49, was it 49 individuals? 49 individuals who have worked in the restaurant or are currently working in the restaurant industry. For a qualitative approach, we surveyed 3 individuals who were also working in the restaurant industry, and we did those face to face.
Sorry, Caitlin.
Oh, you're okay. Types of research questions. Survey questions included questions such as how often do you have 5 or more drinks on one occasion, and how often do you arrive hungover to work for a work shift.
Just to kind of piggyback onto that, for our survey analysis, we used a program called Stata 54 to code our quantitative data, actually. For our interviews, what we did is we took 3 individuals that are currently working in a restaurant. We sat down with them face to face and asked 11 open-ended questions. We used open-ended questions to try to get more of a genuine or honest answer about how they really felt. Some of the examples of the interview questions, things like how would you say your substance use habits compare to others working in the restaurant industry or not working in the restaurant industry? How do you think your coworkers cope with the stress of working in a restaurant industry? And what do you think your coworkers would say or do if they were to find out that you had an alcohol or substance abuse problem?
This table shows our descriptive statistics of the dependent and independent variables. The mean age of years in the service industry was 6.6 years, and then the mean age of respondents was 31. This table is a regression for age and years worked in the service industry with frequency of binge drinking. Regression analysis did show statistically significant relationship between the independent variable of years worked in the restaurant industry and the dependent variable of how often an individual has alcoholic drinks. Significance level was P equals to 0.014. There was a positive relationship found between these two, showing for each year increase of work in the restaurant industry, there was a 0.63 increase in how likely an individual was to drink alcohol more often. This table shows a regression for age and years worked in the restaurant industry with the frequency of binge drinking. Statistical significance was found between the independent variable of years worked in the restaurant industry and the dependent variable of frequency of binge drinking. The significance level was at 0.017. The 2 variables were shown to also have a positive relationship. With each year increase in the service industry work, there was a 0.401 increase in binge drinking. For interview, we interviewed 3 participants. They all worked in the restaurant industry. These are fake names. Stephanie was a 20-year-old female. She was currently working in the restaurant industry with 4 years of experience in the restaurant industry. Jessica was a 26-year-old female with 10 years of experience in the restaurant industry, also currently working within the restaurant industry. And Leah was a 23-year-old female with 8 years of restaurant work industry experience and is currently also working in the restaurant industry.
So some trends we kind of encountered and found when we were doing these interviews, that there was, like we had already touched on, very quick and easy acceptance when either drinking in copious amounts or when using illicit drugs. One of our interviewees was quoted as saying that they would not be shocked if they found out that a coworker was abusing substances or alcohol. Another quote we saw, the quotes were kind of interesting. Since I have access to a free drink every night, it's just easy. I mean, who wouldn't? Using drugs and alcohol as a coping mechanism is what we found was like a high stressor for using these types of things, using and abusing, I should say. Because of the need, or because of so much stress when working in a restaurant industry, we found that these restaurant workers would use illicit drugs or alcohol to cope amongst this stress. It was very much an environment of everyone else is doing it, so why not? It's there absolutely when you're done working. A lot of my coworkers carry around substances with them. One of our interviewees said they were talking about like dab pens. One of our interviewees actually said that the management even is involved in this type of activity. She said that when they would start a shift, her manager would be one way, and by the end of the shift, she was no longer able to get assistance from him because he had been either drinking or using drugs throughout the shift. This is just a quote that really stuck with us. Do I think there's anything that can be done to fix it? Probably not.
This is just some of that continued. So all interviewees felt that the restaurant industry hasn't had an alcohol and substance abuse problem. The absence of peer judgment and encouragement helps to facilitate this problem. A little bit continued here. Availability was a factor. Use of substances and alcohol while on the shift was shown to be prevalent in the interviews. Management was also included on this. As Brandy said, the restaurant provides workers with a one shift drink, like she said as well. Final findings, our results showed that working in the restaurant industry was associated with an increase of use in alcohol and other substances.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
It's just as good seeing it the second time. All right. Last but certainly not least of our presentations, we have one more presentation from our colleagues over in nursing.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brittany Ingram, and I am a student nurse at the University of South Dakota, and I will be presenting our SOS Student Wellness Initiative. Some background on why we decided to start this initiative was that previous researchers report that nursing students experience higher levels of stress than students in other health sciences, and this stress can lead to diseases, changes in health, poor academic performance, student withdrawal from the program, and can ultimately affect the quality of patient care. In addition to the typical demands of a college major, pre-licensure nursing students also experience increased stress related to an increased demands on time and mental ability. Clinical experiences, course content, strict pass-fail guidelines, and life and death are inherent in healthcare. As a result, pre-licensure nursing students are at increased risk for adverse outcomes related to unmanaged stress. The USD nursing students have identified the need for wellness support and strategies, and these needs were identified in the fall of 2022 when a survey was sent out to different nursing semesters to identify some of the stressors they experience within nursing school and how they think that we can help them to relieve some of this stress. So the objective behind our initiative is to implement evidence-based wellness management strategies in a pre-licensure program to improve student wellness and performance to improve their personal health. Students will then have these improved coping abilities to carry into practice, helping to shape the nursing culture and patient outcomes through improved personal health practices. To implement this initiative, we launched a new student-led wellness initiative during the spring 2023 semester to introduce holistic evidence-based wellness activities in short, focused bursts for nursing students. And the reason behind this is to manage and reduce stress levels for improved performance, health, attitude, and role satisfaction as a student and future nurse. We also may want to maintain intensive student involvement with faculty mentoring. And the reason behind this is to continue to be meaningful and student-led in future semester cohorts. So some of the initiatives that we implemented for this initiative, we had a Wonder Water walking challenge. And what this was, it just gave students an opportunity to engage in different activities and challenges that we had. So with Wonder, this included a gratitude and humor section. So the gratitude section, students would do like journaling. Like 1 week we had a challenge where you would write in your write in a journal or write wherever you could for things that you were grateful for. And then the second week we had random act of kindness. So anytime during that week we could, pay it forward and do a random act of kindness. And then the third week was celebrating you. And that was just you spending time for yourself, just taking a break from school and just like having a moment to yourself. And these challenges lasted 21 days. The water challenge was similar to the gratitude. So that was just 21 days of increased water intake. And then walking, again, 21 days of increased activity to clear your mind. Another initiative that we had was nutrition. So there was a collaboration with community nutrition experts to present healthier snacks. And we proposed changing snack options in our vending machines. So a survey was sent out to students in the nursing program, and there was a list of snacks that was available in the vending machine and a list of snacks that they would rather eat in the vending machine than those that were already in there. So that was one way we tried to get students involved in this initiative. The last thing we had was choose your own ending. And so this was participation in USD wellness activities or topics based on personalized needs. So whether it be going to the wellness center to do a fitness class, or participating in student well-being and health weekly topics and USD sponsored health presentations. So everything all tied together. And during this initiative, during Wonder Water walking, there were incentives for students that showed interest in participating and those that actually participated in our challenges. And some of the incentives included gift cards to local businesses, we had stickers for water bottles, and then at the end, when our walking challenge is complete, we will do a grand drawing for everyone that showed interest, participated, and some of the gifts for this grand drawing would be like a Lippmann stethoscope, a really nice water bottle, and a massage. So those are things that we are working on. Some future steps for this initiative, we are hoping to elevate the impact of the Wonder Walking initiative intervention on nursing students' stress through administering the stressors in nursing students in a longitudinal study. We also want to continue to track nursing student participation in interventions, to invite students from other programs to participate to enhance wellness, and to follow graduating students into clinical practice to follow up on perceived stress. We want to take the time out to acknowledge all the students who have helped with the activities and those who participated in the activities. And I want to thank you for being at this presentation with me, and I really hope that it is something that can be implemented among others. And I was really excited to be a part of this initiative. I think it was very great. And when we presented this poster idea at the university's Idea Fest, there was a lot of comments about implementing it like across the board in different programs. So it is something that is a really talked about topic, which is like stress, whether you're in nursing school or not. Like college overall is very stressful. And so having something like this initiative to kind of take an edge off would be really, really nice. Thank you.
All right, well, we have finished with our basic lineup of questions, and we were sufficiently expeditious in this particular session, so we have a good amount of time for questions. So questions for our presenters, because I definitely know that we had people taking active notes throughout.
This was regarding my question was, what were your sample size? And what kind of questions did you have? Were they all independent, or did you have specific questions that,
And if I can ask y'all to come up front just so that folks on Zoom can hear you too. Okay, I have a chance being.
So our sample size was about 40 individuals, predominantly male individuals, and they were open-ended questions. Our lab kind of met as a group and kind of brainstormed some open-ended questions, and then those just led to other questions throughout the interview process.
Our surveys were not so open-ended questions. So like in our interviews, we'd ask things like what they did right before and after, or like right before, and like if they had plans after our tattoo appointment. We just asked some pretty like broad questions about their tattoo history and previous experiences. The survey had more like health history questions. It asked like where your previous tattoos are, like how big they are, where your the one you just got was. And then like any medications you take regularly, or if you took any like painkillers before your appointment. Gosh, what else is there? And then it asks also about your state of mind before, during, and after appointment, because mostly what's on our survey.
I actually have a follow-up question. So you mentioned that the majority of your respondents were male, and if I remember correctly,
No, so this has been, we started, gosh, like last July, I think, gathering, like starting our interviews and started sending out surveys sometime in the past couple months, is I think when we started rolling those out. So we've been, this has been an ongoing thing. We got a couple of respondents from the tattoo convention, but the majority of our data has come from, we're working with Red Arbor Tattoo, and there's location in Sioux Falls, location in T. So we go up and we talk to their clients.
cool. So I guess one question, this is like yeah, mentioned that. I was kind of curious why your response happens to be male.
I think it might be because all the tattoo artists we work with are male. So I don't know if, like,
Yeah,
if you're a male, you gravitate to a male tattoo artist. I don't know.
yeah, the clients are predominantly male. We do have some female data in our poster, but just the majority of the clients happen to be male.
Is that representative, do you think, of kind of tattoo getting tattoo? I haven't heard of that. The primaries and you is and like more like.
I think it's kind of a little bit of everything. So since we work with only male tattoo artists, I have noticed a tendency because at one point there was one female artist at the shop, but she has left now. But I noticed that she would get more of the female clients like going to her, wanting to get a tattoo. So I think there's a little bit of like, men tend to gravitate toward male tattoo artists, women tend to gravitate toward female tattoo artists. But also, tattooing, I think, while it's becoming like more prevalent in society, has generally been seen as like a male thing to do, like men get tattoos. I mean, that has changed drastically in like the last even like 50 years, but I think it's predominantly male activity.
Yeah, I certainly have fun.
This would, um, the alcohol and substance abuse in the restaurant industry.
Brandy and Caitlin, there's a question for you.
I didn't hear it. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I wanted to give you a heads up that a question was incoming, not that it had been asked quite yet.
Okay, thanks.
My question is, slightly decision, are we doing kind of like for the chicken and egg kind of concept? Or did you see any patterns in prior binge drinking behavior leading to being employed in restaurant industry?
Were you able to hear it? I think I can actually repeat this one. My memory's bad, but this is relatively to the point. I can repeat if necessary.
I would appreciate it.
Okay, so Dr. Spars's question was whether this is kind of a chicken and the egg scenario that's going on in your in your findings, that are people who tend to gravitate toward this line of work people who already have a substance abuse problem, and thus it just continues in this line of work?
I know that there was like in our, at least like when we were doing like our literature review, that was like something that people were looking at, and like whether it was like they were self-selecting into that restaurant industry because of its prevalence. But I think it seems like it is a bit of both. At least, I mean, Brandy, what do you think?
Yeah, I definitely think that it can be kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, but I also think that working in the restaurant industry comes with a whole line of stressors that a lot of other professions don't have, especially the hiding the emotions when you're working and not being able to express yourself, or even to take the time to take a break and go express yourself, because that's just not an option when you're working in a restaurant. A little bit of both, I would say.
Other questions?
One more then, sorry.
Go for it.
Patient abuse. you, I hate to use this word, feel that your respondents were more honest in a face-to-face interview versus an anonymous questionnaire?
So the question was, do you feel, with the emphasis being that the questioner does not like the word feel, that your respondents were more honest and open? I'm tacking on the word open, in their responses in the face-to-face interview than they would be if it were an anonymous interview.
I think it kind of went both ways. Again, not to continue that trend, but our interviewees were people that our researchers knew and worked with within the restaurant industry. So I think they were very open and honest, but I also feel that it's just human nature to be a little bit more honest when you're anonymous instead of face-to-face with a peer.
Thank you.
I actually have a question for our colleagues over in nursing, regarding your examination to peer feedback in the nursing skills lab. So you utilized, I don't remember the exact name of the method, but we in SOCH, we use kind of similar methods. I think we would probably consider kind of what you did to be like a content or a synthesis method. I was kind of curious why to examine this particular question you chose that method.
Sure. So one of the reasons that that method was chosen is it's commonly used in the health sciences when you're doing a concept analysis. And the other reason was it's part of my dissertation process, so it was a required component. But it is the most common method for analysis for concepts in health sciences, is why it was used.
So, kind of given what you noted in your review,
22, yes.
I think that perhaps an exploration, additional work, it's a lot of work anyway, but you think that exploration, something like posters, might be useful in terms of exploring.
Yes, and this is actually leading up to a larger study. We've been collecting feedback using a beliefs about peer feedback questionnaire and a longitudinal study as part of the quality improvement for the lab. And it does have an open answer, what do you believe about peer feedback? What do you think peer feedback is? So that could definitely be drawn from.
So you utilize a term of education that you utilize the term empirical. What does that mean?
Off the top of my head right now, I can't remember, but I do believe it is having to do with things that have to exist in order for the concept to occur, if I'm remembering correctly.
Okay. So you mentioned that belief predates peer feedback, right? Why?
Well, the theory behind my research is the theory of planned behavior. And so we're looking at what students believe as part of their behavioral beliefs, their internal and external beliefs, and how that impacts their peer interactions. So that's students have some sort of predetermined belief about peer feedback in and of itself. They either view it as positive or negative. That belief can change over time depending on the interactions, but there is some form of belief there.
Did you ask questions at the beginning and at the end, their interpretations of feedback and how they respond to it and how well they do it?
Yes, so a lot of the survey data is looking at what their beliefs are about peer feedback. Do they view it as a positive or negative thing? Are their beliefs about them giving peer feedback, what those are, and their beliefs about receiving peer feedback and what those are? So yes, so this is a longitudinal study. So we do it at the beginning of the semester and we're doing it again at the end of the semester to see if it changes. And we're looking at the possibility of this may turn into an interventional study as we're looking at some potential software that would allow us to facilitate them recording themselves and getting more digital peer feedback instead of just that immediate. So that might change things a little bit. It'd be a little bit more guided. They would have a checklist right there. They could pause the tape and, you know, things like that. So that might change the outcomes of that peer feedback belief system. Yes, yes. And also to receive more feedback instead of just the only feedback you get is who happens to be at the bedside with you at that moment. Then peers, the entire class essentially could go in and view that recording and provide you feedback. You can self-evaluate on that one. Instructors could go in and provide you feedback. If they, you know, we have 24 students in the lab sometimes, and there's maybe 2 instructors. So we can't get to everyone. So this would facilitate them receiving much larger amount of feedback. Mm-hmm.
We mentioned kind of stratifying that is a special edition of here. I was curious if
In the nursing, not so much. A peer is anyone that in nursing is in this level would be a peer is anyone that is also a nursing student. So it doesn't really account for I guess if you consider you would have to be able to afford to attend the university, you'd have to be afford to attend the program. We do have some international students, but none of that. You're just the basis is you're a nursing student is your peer.
Well, I guess.
All of our students are full-time students. Yes. Yeah, we don't have a part-time. They're all full-time traditional students. Okay.
My name is Jasmine Johnson. I worked on the poster as well. Mm-hmm. Mentorship. I know we've talked about it a lot in our program, trying to implement more mentors, and like specifically students have asked for it. But I mean, I think intensive mentorship would include like meeting with professors constantly, and like we've talked about having like 4th semester students, because our program's 4 semesters long, meeting with 2nd semesters or 1st semesters who are swamped and don't know how to study and are still struggling and like behind. I think intensive would then be meeting with them frequently or talking about, hey, this is how I do it. This is how you need to structure yourself. This is what you're doing wrong. And then continuously going to those teachers who have a lot of office hours, or continuously reach out for help if they can tell you're behind. That's what I would say is intensive membership or mentorship.
It does, you mentioned first year, second year.
Yep. Yes, yeah, yep. I know there's, we're required to take an NCLEX class, for before we actually take our exam, but yes, there is continued past, just when you get your nursing pin at the end of, nursing school, you still get that mentorship even beyond that.
And if you happen to know, you look at international student result taking the NCLEX versus national students taking the NCLEX. There's very, very significant.
Yeah.
Have you? Whether that helps you familiar with that.
I don't know if we've really dived into that topic specifically. I think it's definitely an interesting one because there is obviously that disparity, and I think more needs to be done for those students in order to help, decrease that. But not, besides just having the same teachers as everyone else and having just, those fellow students, I don't know if we have specifically just for that mentorship yet. Yeah.
Curious about your program being wonderful, walk.
Yes.
Did the participation levels vary with respect to the time of the semester you held them? Because I was thinking more along the lines of somebody being able to go out for a walk in this horrible weather.
Yeah. Yeah.
Levels of participation you have and relates to that levels of satisfaction.
Well, I know Professor Fleming can correct me if I'm wrong. I believe the walking was, we were trying to gear it more towards like April. So it'd be a time where you could walk. But for actual like differences and actual participation, I don't think we really noticed a ton. I think the people that participated continued to participate and there wasn't a big difference. I know for like the water one, it was like in March. And so like, it was like a lot of like spring break and a lot of things happening at that point. But I don't think that, whether it was in March or we would have done it in January or anything, it didn't really seem to affect how many of our students participated or not.
Did you gauge any,
I think like in the future, like we're going to continue to like look and see whether what we did was correct or not. Like in future semesters, go back and say, okay, is this, did this work in the future or not? But currently we have not made a survey as of right now because it's still like, we are still doing the walking one right now. Yeah. So we have to wait and see until like the very end of the semester when it's fully complete. And then we will possibly send out surveys and further gauge. There you go. I was like, I know we haven't yet, but we're doing it soon. Yes. Okay, thank you.
All right, and as with the first session, if we could just share a little bit of love for our presenters for our second session. All right, thank you very much. After a couple minute intermission, we'll proceed into our third session.